What's up, everybody? Patrick Hickey Jr. here, Editor-in-Chief of Legacy Comics, bringing you the return episode of Talkin Comics. This week out, we are going to be discussing the origins of one of our best series, one of our most beloved series, The Job. So, for people that don't know, I am the editor-in-chief of Legacy Comics. I am the owner of Legacy Comics. I am one of the co-founders of Legacy Comics. I have previous comic book publishing experience from lesser-known comics, where I launched my Condry series in 2021. I am also a published author 7 times. I have contributed to several books. I am a college professor. I am a video game historian. I simply put, I love to write. I'm also a voice actor. I've been in several video games over the years. So the past 17 years, I've been creating all sorts of fun pop culture infused content. So yeah, we're back. Talking Comics is back. It's been too long, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be about us. It's going to be about the things that you guys like. It's going to be about the things that you guys think about. And it's going to be honest. So this week out, we are going to be discussing the origin of The Job. So for people that haven't read The Job is our love letter to films like Ocean's 11, Mickey Rourke's The Wrestler, The French Connection, Heat. It's bank heists, it's love, it's professional wrestling. There's a little My Cousin Vinny in there. There's a little Two Broke Girls in there. And it's just this concoction of this couple that cannot scrape by a living by accomplishing their dreams. They've wanted to be involved in professional wrestling for as long as they can remember, and they're trying, but they just can't catch a break. So they find another way to catch a break, and that's by breaking into banks. Successfully. They're actually much better at breaking into banks than they are in professional wrestling. But that's not to say that they can't be great in professional wrestling. They just haven't gotten their big break yet. And they're trying. And they're trying extremely hard. So, how did this series come to be? It's pretty simple. I have written 7 books on video game history. For those that don't know, they're called The Minds Behind the Games. What I do there is I spend a ton of time interviewing video game developers from the Atari 2600 and PC all the way to the consoles of today. I get them to tell me the behind the scenes stories of their creations. And over the course of doing that, I've had a nice amount of success. I'm in over 1,000 libraries worldwide. I've done speaking engagements at PAX East and PAX West, and tons of little cons in and out in between, Coleco Con and all sorts of different cons. But I would say after the second or third book, I started to get really adventurous. And a good friend of mine, Matt DeRogatis, who's an actor, is like, "How come you've never written a play yet?" And my answer was, I hate you. And he's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "When do you need it by?" And he's like, it was like Halloween of like 2019. And he just said, "When do you need to buy it?" I'm like, okay. He said Thanksgiving, and it was Halloween, and I got it done. And it ended up as this really fun take on classic bank heist films, but with this huge connection to professional wrestling. And it was, like I said, initially designed as a play, written like a play for an actor. And after that happened, we went through a couple of drafts, and I continued to redraft and went through about 3 or 4 drafts, and we were trying to find a producer and a playhouse, and then COVID happened. Theaters in New York City were done. So fast forward a couple of months after that, and I ended up getting my first job in comics at lesser known comics. And I was writing Condry at the time with Kieran X, Quinn. And after about 2 or 3 successful issues of Condry, I pitched The Job. And I said, listen, this would make like a great 6-issue miniseries. But the owner of lesser known comics, Mark Burnell, was basically like, just stick to Condry. And at that point, I had already written a spin-off of Condry, a one-shot, which later became Sarita for Legacy Comics. That was already done. And I had ideas for Kroom. But the job was something that I was super high on. And it wasn't going to come to fruition for lesser known comics. So when I decided to eventually leave lesser known comics and begin Legacy, the job was the second book that I decided to write. Obviously with Condry being the first, but see, this was the thing too, what a lot of people don't know is the initial plan was to leave Condry at lesser known and continue to write for lesser known and have the job and Kroom be kind of like our lead comics alongside Legend of the Night Owl with Afram Jambalai and Athos by John Svedesi. And then I just came to the conclusion where I was just like, you know what, if I'm going to start a new company, I might as well take everything with me. And the thing is, what a lot of people don't know, and what you're going to start to find out over the next couple of months, is that Condry and the job take place in the same universe. So it just made sense to keep them all under one imprint. So Kieran Quinn, it's my guy on Condry. He's an amazing artist, super talented. His pencils are fantastic. His inks are great. His colors are fantastic. I mean, we're talking, this guy can do watercolors. He can do digital. He can do all sorts of things. That was the guy that I wanted to draw the job. And we did the Ashcan together. And it came out fantastic. But it's like, as time went on, I realized that it wasn't fair to Kieran for him to be on 3 series at once. I don't think Jack Kirby could do 3 books in a month. He probably could. Be Kirby crackle all over the place. It'd be fantastic. But it's just a lot. At that point, we had just gotten Steve Cange to do a variant cover for Kroom, which is one of our prettiest covers to date, and he did an 8-page story with Chris McCauley for Renfield Visions of Madness, and he was free. So it just made sense, because Steve is just somebody that I completely adore. I love to work with, that we bring him in on the job for job number 1, because job 0 is very much a ashcan. It's a proof of concept. It's a sign of what's to come. And for the first full issue, I wanted to get it out fast, or faster than what we were producing at that time. And I felt like if I had Kieran working on Legend of the Night Owl and Condry, and I had Steve working on the job, that we would just kind of balance things out more. And it turned out to be a really good decision, because so many people have said how much they love the art in the job number 1. So that's kind of the story of how the job came to be, and how Steve Cange got on the series after Kieran Quinn did the Ashcan. It was never ever my intention to replace Kieran. It's just what was the best move for the company. And as editor-in-chief and owner of Legacy Comics, I have to make decisions like that every single day. What makes the most sense for the company. And it's not always easy, but I always have to be on top of things and make sure that we're putting out our best product possible. So to go back to the comic books creation, I've always been a fan of the film Heat. Val Kilmer, awesome actor. Al Pacino, awesome, amazing. And just the way these banks are robbed, just super, super cool. We have a great cop chasing great criminals, excellent criminals. And it's just a cat and mouse game. And there's that level of respect between the criminals and the authority. That's a topic that I absolutely positively wanted to explore. It's kind of like the relationship, I would say, between Kingpin and Daredevil. where they don't like each other very much, but they respect each other in the fact that they know what each other are capable of. It's not like this extremely hateful relationship like a Green Goblin and Spider-Man, where it's just like Spider-Man will never forgive Norman Osborn for killing Gwen Stacy. Never. And even though, Kingpin is constantly putting hits out on Daredevil and they don't like each other very much, there's still that level of respect because they know what each other are capable of. And they know that they're on two completely different sides. So that's a theme. That's a theme I very much wanted to explore in the job. Another theme that I really liked was in the film Point Break. If you guys have ever seen Point Break with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves and Lori Petty, where you have a bunch of bank robbers and they wear president's masks. And it's just completely silly. But for me, it's just like, if Dan's a professional wrestler, why can't he wear a different mask for every robbery? It's just like, if you're going to wear a mask and rob a bank, why not wear a cool mask? Like, I'm just thinking of like, if he's a jobber and he grew up watching wrestling and he's smart enough to pull off all of these bank heists, he's got to be a student. He's got to be a historian. He's got to be somebody that has an appreciation for the medium. So my whole thing is, it's just like, what if this guy has like a collection of lucha masks and he uses a different one for every single bank robbery? I just thought artistically that would be a great way to connect with wrestling fans. It would also be a really cool way of keeping things fresh. So that was another theme that I wanted to explore. Also, when we were putting together like the initial like legacy lineup, I wanted strong female characters. And Sarita, if you guys have read Condry, Sarita is very much a strong female character. But I also wanted some eye candy, and I also wanted some sass, because let's be fair, Sarita is older. She's a little sassy, but she's not. I'm thinking Marissa Tomei and My Cousin Vinny sassy. I'm thinking Two Broke Girls sassy. I'm thinking Shelley Long Cheers sassy. I'm thinking Elaine Bennis Seinfeld sassy. I'm thinking of like a strong woman that is ride or die with their husband, but strong enough to like survive on their own. And Bev Diro is very, very much that. So that was another topic that I wanted to explore in the job. Then also too, I wanted it to be an homage to some of my favorite moments in professional wrestling and be just chock full of Easter eggs and fun stuff. And just, if you're a wrestling fan and you see lines in there like, oh, give me all the money or you're gonna lose your smile, and you immediately go, that's a Shawn Michaels promo from the mid-90s, or anything. I wanted people that loved professional wrestling to have a comic that they felt comfortable with, that they felt like was written by someone that understood how much they love pro wrestling, but it wasn't completely pro wrestling. Because my whole thing is like, watching pro wrestling, a lot of the times you like the balance between promo and in-ring action. If it's all in-ring action and it's 3 hours, it's going to get a little boring. If there's a good promo in between, if there's a good vignette, if there's sexy intros and entrances, that begins to like kind of spice things up. So I'm like, we can have in-ring matches take place over the course of the comic, but I really wanted it to be an inside look into as to why he wrestles and what he goes through in the locker room and after matches and all the thought that goes into a match. So of course, like you guys have already seen in the job one, some in-ring action, and you're gonna see in-ring action throughout, but I think a lot of the stuff that's so interesting about pro wrestling doesn't even take place in the ring. So I wanted to explore that as well. So when you put all of those things together, you've got the job. So another thing too is that there isn't really a huge list of great wrestling comics out there. There are wrestling comics written for pro wrestlers or by pro wrestlers, or illustrating like their behind the scenes stories. And I mean, I did a Powerbomb from Image, is amazing. That's probably like the best wrestling comic out. There's a couple of other solid wrestling comic books out there, but they mainly focus on the in-ring action. I forgot, like I remember probably like 12 or 13 years ago, I read a black and white intergalactic wrestling comic. If anyone remembers the name of it, or if I remember it, maybe I'll put it in the show notes at some point. But it was so much fun. It was so much fun. But it focused mainly on like the feuds in the ring. I wanted this to almost have more of a cinematic feel. I wanted it to be more about the characters than the wrestling comic. Than like, the wrestling business. It's kind of like I wanted it to be something that drew people into pro wrestling if they didn't like pro wrestling, and something that pro wrestling fans appreciated. So definitely trying to strike a balance. Also trying to make it extremely female friendly, but at the same time still testosterone filled enough for guys to like it. It's just, I wanted it to be this comic that catered to a bunch of different people. A lot of that has to do with the dialogue. I feel like the dialogue is super real. It's super authentic. The way Dan and Beverly speak to each other is very much the way like my wife and I speak to each other. We're super honest with each other. Sometimes it's not pretty, sometimes it's not nice, but it's real. There's definitely love involved between these two characters, but Beverly says it how it is, and sometimes Dan doesn't like what she has to say, but he knows that she's right, and sometimes he has to find out things on his own before he learns, and he's extremely stubborn, but he's extremely talented, and he wants her by his side, so they just have this winning combination. So far through issues 0 and 1, we've definitely seen how stubborn and strong Dan can be, and we're just starting to see in issue 1 that Beverly is a clear piece. She's super important to the structure of the story, to the flow of the story. Like, you can't have this story without her. She's a driving force in it. And all I'm going to say is that, like, moving forward, that's not going to change. And even when this arc is finished, Beverly's role in what I like to call the Conjureverse is never going to be understated. She's almost like the queen of the Conjureverse. The role that she's going to play in these stories can never be, underestimated. So Dan's role is an important one as well. Obviously, he is the main character, but the way this couple adapts and changes through what they face as they move on through the story, how when Dan starts to face some adversity and how Beverly stands by him, super important. So it's not a romance comedy, but it's definitely like a situational drama. It definitely has some Law and Order in it, some crime noir in it. Cannot as well, since we're talking about characters in it, Jannetty is an incredibly important character. We only see a little bit of him through issue 1, but he is going to play an incredible role in this series. He's the good guy, but he's also kind of like the bad guy. The lines have been drawn because we don't want to see Dan and Beverly get caught. But Jannetty's good. Jannetty is an excellent cop. And he already, just from checking out the crime scene, he's intrigued by what Dan and Beverly are doing. And he's watching. And it's definitely going to be that cat and mouse game. So again, if you're a fan of Heat and Val Kilmer's work in the film and Al Pacino's work in the film, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy the job. And it's just funny to me that, like, almost 4 years ago, this began as a play. and now we're working on issue 2 of it. But the cool part of it starting as a play is that like the characters have already been completely fleshed out, and what you guys have coming up is so much fun. It's going to be so enjoyable. Cannot wait for you guys to check it out. So that's it for episode 4 of Talking Comics. Next week we're probably going to talk about something not related to Legacy Comics, maybe our favorite characters of all time or our favorite story arcs. We're going to pick something really cool. This was just kind of like the return episode to get us back to business. Don't forget to share the podcast, help us get out there, check out our work. We're an indie comic book publisher. We want as many eyes as possible. So check us out, and until next week, have a great one, guys.